right, so we are going to take a look at this problem, and it's going to combine two things we've done over the past few weeks. So the directions say to solve, and we see something written in standard form, like we've seen the past few weeks. And since the directions say to solve and not just to factor, we want to get an answer for x, a solution for x. We want to know what could x be. So the first step is going to do what we've done the past few weeks. We are going to factor. We're going to make it two sets of parentheses. Now we see that this whole thing here equals 0, which we saw probably about a month ago. So we'll get to that next. So that second step is going to be to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. So if you don't remember that, we'll review it here. So first step we should be very familiar with is to factor this. So let's draw our area model. Fill in our first box with our x squared, our bottom right-hand box with our last term, that 12. And now, since there is no number in front of the x squared, we know that we can use this 12. We're going to find numbers that multiply to 12 and add to our middle number, 7. All right, so what are some numbers that multiply to 12? Well, there's 12 times 1, there's 6 times 2, there's 3 times 4, but we know that the numbers must add up to 7. Well, 12 plus 1 is 13. That's not going to work. 6 plus 2 is 8. We're close. 3 plus 4 is 7. All right, we found our numbers. So let's go use this in our other two boxes of our area model. All right, so I'm going to put 3x here and 4x here. As always, we could have switched those and we're still going to end up with the same answer. And our very last step is to figure out what goes outside of the box, outside of the area model, and we'll have our factors. All right, so what does this row have in common? Well, they both have an x. What about this row? All right, well, they don't have an x, but does 3 go into both 3 and 12? It does. All right, now let's fill out the top. X times what gives us x squared? X. And x times what gives us 4x? Well, we have the x, we're missing the 4. And let's just double check that this works out. X times x, x squared. X times 4, 4x. Good. 3 times x, 3x. So far, so good. And 3 times 4, positive 12. All right, so we have our factors. So now let's go, just like we've done, let's go put these guys in our parentheses. But the only thing that we have to remember here is in our original problem, it now says equals 0. So we cannot forget that. So let's go put these in our parentheses. So we have an x and a 4, where the 4 is positive. Let's put a plus sign. And we have an x and a 3. The 3 is positive, so we'll put a plus sign. All right, so that's our first step. We have factored. Done. Now the second step says to set each factor, so each parentheses, equal to 0 and solve for x. Find out what x is. All right, so that brings us back to remember that thing called the zero product property. So we're going to take this, x plus 4, and set it equal to 0. We're going to write the word or in between, and then we're going to take our second parentheses, x plus 3, and set that equal to 0. All right, now we just have simple algebra problems. All right, to get that x by itself, we have a positive 4, so we're going to subtract 4, the opposite. And 4 minus 4 is 0. So now we have x equals 0 minus 4 equals negative 4. All right, so we have one solution or one answer for x. And we actually have another one. All right, we see a positive 3, so the opposite is minus 3 on both sides. And 3 minus 3 is 0. We have an x left. We bring that down. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. All right. Now, you won't be asked to do this on your assignments, but what does this all mean? Well, we started with a quadratic. We know it's a quadratic because we see the little 2, that squared term, and we end up with two answers. Well, what do these two answers mean? These two solutions mean? Well, if we were to graph this, where would our quadratic, our u, hit the x-axis? Well, it would hit the x-axis at 1, 2, 3, -3 and -4. So it would look something like this. Now, is that perfect? No, but we know it's U-shaped, and we know that it's going to hit the x-axis at -4 and -3. All right, let's do one more example. We'll do it a little bit quicker this time. All right, so one more example, same steps. So it says to solve, we have x squared minus x minus 20 equals 0. So we just have some negatives here, but don't let that throw you off. You're doing it the same way. The first thing I would do is I would notice that this middle term is just a minus x. So what could we put in front of it? We could put a 1. That might help you out when we get to the problem later. All right, so first step is to factor. We want to make sure this thing has two sets of parentheses. So we know that our what we want it to look like is two sets of parentheses equals 0. So in order to figure out what goes in those parentheses, we're going to create our area model. We're going to put our x squared in the top left-hand corner and our -20, can't forget that negative, in the bottom right-hand corner. Now we want numbers that multiply to this -20, but that add to our middle term, our -1. All right, so I'm gonna scooch over here. All right, so what are some numbers that multiply to -20? Well, let's see. Well, we have -20 times +1. We have +20 times -1. Let me zoom out real quick so we have a little bit more, move this up a little bit so we have a little more room. All right, what else? We have 10 times -2. We have -10 times +2. We have 5 times -4. We have -5 times +4. And so let's go ahead and see, well, which one of these is going to give us -1 when we add? Well, I can look down this list and I know that -20 plus 1 is not going to give me -1, and neither is 20 and -1. What about 10 plus -2? Well, that's going to give me 8. I'm still not there. What if I go down here? 5 plus -4 gives me a +1. I'm very close. I need a -1. So let's try this one. -5 plus 4. Oh, that gives me -1. So these are my two factors. The negative must go with the 5 and the 4 must be positive. So let's go put those in our box, in our blank boxes up here. So we're going to have a -5x and a +4x. Again, we could have switched those. That's fine. And last but not least, let's fill out our factors out here. All right, what does this row have in common? They all have that. They both have x's. What about this row? Well, they both have a negative. And it looks like 5 is going to go into both 5 and 20. Okay. All right. X times what is going to give us x squared? X. X times what is going to give us 4x? 4. Let's double check to make sure this works out. X times x, x squared. Yep. X times 4, 4x. Yep. -5 times x, -5x. -5 times 4, -20. Perfect. All right, we're good to go. Let's go put these in our parentheses. All right. I got a little mixed up here. That's okay. Erase that. All right, so we're going to put x and 4. The 4 is positive, so we'll put it here. And then we have x and minus and -5. So that becomes our minus. And we have to remember the equals 0 because that's what they told us in the original problem. All right, so let's solve. We're going to set this parentheses, x plus 4 equal to 0. Write the word or in the middle. And then we're going to set this parentheses, x minus 5 equal to 0. All right, let's solve. All right, well, this one we can subtract 4 from both sides, and we end up with x equals -4. All right, so that's one of our x-intercepts, one of our solutions. And over here we have a -5 or a -5, and the opposite is adding 5 or +5 to both sides, and we get x equals 0 plus 5 is +5. All right, we have our two solutions here, and we are done. And if we wanted to know, well, what does this all mean? Well, if we were to put it onto a graph, where would this U-shaped thing, this quadratic, touch the x-axis? Well, it would touch the x-axis at -4 and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would be a U through -4 and -5. And like I said, this is not a perfect drawing, but it shows you what this all means.